Welcome back to another exciting edition of the Pointless Exercise podcast. It's time to remember this crap with Mike Donahue. Mike, how are you?
Doing good, Andy. Yourself?
Oh, I've never, ever been better. I can't wait
No.
to spin the wheel and see who we get this time. We're down to just all the great Cub teams. No, one at
No
least.
matter no matter what, anything to take my mind off a team that's lost 12 out of 13, about to be 13 out of 15.
It's very hard to find a team worse than the one that's playing now. Um, so apparently Prevagen has a segment during Cub games where they harken back to a great moment in Cub history, and I saw tonight's, and I hope all those elderly people took their Prevagen like they were Tic Tacs, which they
Dad.
are. Um, you had to go all the way back to May 16th, 2022.
Wow.
34 days ago when Wilson Contreras hit his 100th home run. It's like, you're not even,
Oh,
you guys aren't even trying.
where were you 6 weeks
I
ago?
don't remember. I don't remember how old I was back then.
I mean, you asked a question about something that recent and you immediately get defensive.
I
You
probably
don't
would
think
remember more about, like,
May
oh, I
16th,
remember, I
2000.
remember Dave Ross's 100th home run. That happened in his final season as a Cub.
Was that late in the 15th season or during the World Series season of the
Well,
subsequent
oh
year?
shit,
I
I
think it
don't
was
know.
late in 15.
Maybe it's
See,
15. He was so
we
bad in
we need
15.
Marquita.
He was
Was he?
terrible.
Was he?
Oh
I don't
yeah, he
recall.
was awful.
Okay,
And I remember thinking, why are they keeping his old ass around for 16?
because of Lester.
And as much as he's not one of my favorite Cubs. It's
No,
amazing. Like if you watch that 2016 the video, he's in the middle of everything,
a
like
little bit
all
of
year long. It's like,
a
all
little bit
right,
of a
fine.
moth. Yeah, I know. And
But
I think where it was. Did we break it down about the Cleveland game? I mean, really, he kind of extended it in a sense.
well,
Like
I wrote it. We had talked about it, but
it
then I
was you.
wrote it up
Oh, we
when
talked about
Madden
it.
got
Yeah,
fired. I basically said, all right, look for
I
all you assholes who think Joe almost lost the World Series. The guy, there was a Cub manager who almost lost the World Series, but it's the current one, not the
yeah.
former one.
I will say that had Ross not come back to manage, and it could just be sort of deflatingly disappointing, really, because you assume catchers are in some areas, he obviously knows the freaking game's been around it, but he just knows some mystifying things. Had he not come back, then my estimation of David Ross would be much, much higher, of course. If it, the man who hit a home run in his last official at bat, not plate appearance, of course, but at bat in the World Series for the Cubs in Game 7. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah,
that's
because actually he had another clutch moment. He walked
correct.
to lead off
The
the
ninth,
the
right?
ninth inning, and the Cubs didn't score. But the reason it was clutch was then he wasn't around in the 10th to catch Aroldis.
Yep. Or to drive in the State Farm insurance run.
Because as we know, Ross caught 34 pitches in the playoffs of Aroldis Chapman, and he called a fucking fastball every single time. And Miggy made him throw a slider because Aroldis was gassed, and he got through, what was it? Jason
Uh,
Kipnis,
Kipnis was one.
Carlos Santana, and Francisco Lindor.
Yeah.
Where
Or
any
there were.
one hit, or any one home run, and the World Series is lost.
Yeah. No, I don't even I tremble at the thought. So
So anyway, so this week, it's going to be the third week in a row without a baseball podcast with Dave Brown.
where's Dave?
He's at an an undisclosed
Undisclosed?
location.
Hanging out with Liz Cheney's.
He will
In
be
her
back.
dad's
He's
bunker?
not been fired,
Okay, good.
but I have a
I
special
do.
guest. There's going to be
Okay.
a Cub centric, which the fans were asking for it.
Oh, who wouldn't
Um,
line up for that?
Sammy Sosa.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, buddy.
At least I think so. Somebody DM'd me on Twitter and said, "Hey, it's Sammy Sosa. I want to come on your podcast." I said, "Fine." So Sammy's coming on tomorrow. We're going to talk about.
Are
Uh,
you sure it wasn't Ryan Dempster?
mm,
Okay. I'm just asking.
Sammy's Twitter handle is Dempster Foundation, right?
Uh, I will say, I will say that I've enjoyed listening to your podcast with Dave because it doesn't spend too much time on the Cubs. Dave's got, he's kind of a national reporter, so he has to keep tabs on the teams, and you do too. So, for me at least, I as little attention as I pay to the Cubs, it helps to know what's going on, in the rest of the league. So I do enjoy that. Listen,
that was the idea.
But every now and then, it's good to sort of maybe just, especially when they're this bad. Every night, you wouldn't want to do this every week. Just focus on. Well,
we did, and then Sam and everybody got tired of listening to me saying.
They're standing on the ledge of their apartment in Bucktown, and
So, yes, occasionally we'll veer back into what the fuck is wrong with the Cubs, and that'll be the next podcast after this one. But
I look for
this one. We worry about what the fuck was wrong with old Cubs teams, not the current one. We wax nostalgic. Someday, we'll look back on the 2022 Cubs and go, remember how fucking terrible they were? Do you remember how long they played Jason Hayward for?
Yeah.
Do you remember a guy named Matt Swarmer? No, of course you don't.
Yeah, like the coterie of like rookie-ish 30-year-olds, which itself just seems to never escaped me how bizarre that seems, just the whole, and how soon it was after the World Series. Yeah, there'll be plenty of rich history to mine there. We'll leave it to some future enterprising minds.
Yeah. All right, so we are going to spin the wheel of crap and find a year that we can break down for everyone's excitement.
See if we can find one that's worse than this year's sort of headed. It's possible with what's left. There are some stinkers out there.
Oh, I didn't share it, so you didn't get to see it.
Oh, did you spin it without me?
So it's right on the line. And we're going to talk about the 2002 Chicago Cubs. Woo. So you got 5 quick things about the 2002 Cubs.
See if I can go in chronological order, because I'll always remember that new free agent signee Moises Alou pulled his hamstring by standing in the outfield during batting practice. What kind of shape he was in.
Wasn't that during the opener in Cincinnati?
Correct. So all of a sudden we're all excited. I was still taking days off of work on opening day. That's how geeked I was. Life hadn't gotten too serious, and all excited to see Moises Alou. I'm like, what the fuck is a Roosevelt Brown? And why is it in the opening day lineup? So, yeah, that season got off to a rough start there. And goodbye Don Baylor within a few months. Hello, Bruce Kim. I'm sure we can hash that over for a while. Opening day starter was our guy Jon Lieber, coming off a 20-win season. But at one point, he threw a lot of innings, and he was kind of done after that 20-win season. But for good measure, Baylor, I believe, did have in a game in May, perhaps, have Lieber pitch both sides of a rain delay that consisted of about 2.5 hours or something. That didn't help. That didn't help John's trajectory. But also in 2002, Mark Bellhorn. Holy shit. Who is this guy? Gave us hope for an otherwise terrible team. New free agent signee Chris Steins pissed off reporters early on. Sucked ass. He did deliver a big hit off of Billy Wagner, one of the few times I remember the Cubs coming back on Billy on the Thursday before Memorial Day. Probably the only thing Chris Steins did in 2002. But that's your 2002 Cubs in very piecemeal form.
2 other things to remember about Chris Steins. Do you remember he had a little person that lived in his mouth? Do you remember this?
That was Ryan Friel. The late Ryan Friel, right?
No.
Or do the Cubs have multiple guys?
Oh, wait. No, you're right. It is Ryan Friel.
Farney?
You're right. That was Farney. Okay, sorry. Ooh, I almost killed Chris Steins.
Right. I believe Chris Steins
shot himself. That's right.
Very
Ryan
much
Friel.
alive.
Yeah, Chris Steins, the old Red Sox, right?
Possibly Red Sox. I think of him more as a Red. I also
can picture a squatty little fucker.
Your good friend. Next time you have a beer with your good friend Paul Sullivan, if you can remember to ask about Chris Stein, because I remember Sully was a little bit red-assed over Chris Stein pulling some shit in the clubhouse to the reporter. So he was, I guess, not really maybe a pleasant guy. Just kind of a part-time Red, and was supposed to fill I don't know what the fuck void for the Cubs. Not really an everyday player, but whatever it was supposed to be, he sucked at it. A lot of people sucked. That's why Baylor lost his job.
So, the 2002 Cubs were the 01 Cubs had been this surprise contender.
Mm-hmm.
And They put the finishing touches on this team going into 0-2 so they could, catch the Cardinals and the Astros. It worked out great. But do you remember the late spring training trade that the Cubs made in 2002? It was a big one.
Late spring training. Was it Antonio Alfonseca involved?
Yes.
So Matt Clement, and
Antonio Alfonseca, and I think there was.
We gave up Dontrell, who even prospect perverts at the time probably didn't have too much of a line on, because he had never pitched above like rookie ball or A.
Yeah.
I'm struggling to think who else though was dealt, because there was a major leaguer that the Cubs.
Oh yes. So the trade was Matt Clement and Antonio Alfonseca for Jose Cueto, Ryan Jorgensen, Julian Tavares, and Dontrell Willis.
I don't know if we gave Julian his propers when we did cover the 2001 Cup. We'll be circling back to it tonight to provide context, but it was, I think the way we summarized it was the first team that was legitimately in contention in September in our lifetime that didn't actually close the deal, that faded out. And they had good pitching, the first good starting pitching, good relieving the first 4 months. Lieber, Wood, Tapney was still hanging in there, I believe we discovered. Jason Beret had a nice bounce back. And Julian Tavares, hothead though he was not a bad pitcher in 01. He went like 10-8 or something like that.
Yeah.
Pretty steady.
Julian,
weird.
Julian looked like he put a grease fire out with his face.
Yeah.
And he went on some homophobic rant. Do you remember that?
There's that too. I do remember that.
With Cub fans and in Wrigleyville, that really didn't go over real great.
He was a former Giant for Dusty. All right, Dusty, of course, still managing the Giants in 02. In fact, this was Dusty's World Series season, but Julian came from the Giants, correct? I believe. He kind of rounded out this rotation that, I guess I take so much opportunity to take shots at Andy MacPhail that I guess he deserves some credit. If not, it was completely Jim Henry behind the scenes, but piecing together that rotation, but not meant to be. And the other thing to think about with 2001 was how ridiculous of a one-man show it was with Sammy, who was not getting any younger.
So Julian, had been he broke in with the now Guardians, the Indians, and then he did play for Dusty from 97 to 99. He pitched for Don Baylor in 2000 with the Rockies, which is probably why the Cubs.
No, Baylor was still that was his first year as the Cubs manager, so he might have been.
Oh, that's right. They were terrible in 2000. Then they were good. Then he got fired. That's right. Yeah. 01 wasn't his first season. Okay, so he must have got got a recommendation for Julian.
Yes.
He pitched. Buddy Bell. He played 17 years in the big leagues, and his career record was 88 and 82. Not a lot of decisions there for Julian.
Not bad. I'm impressed he made it to 09.
So Dontrell, you're right, had only pitched. Oh, I just lost it.
I don't think he was on anyone's radar. He may.
I mean, he had success, but he had pitched in 2000. He pitched for the Arizona Rookie League team for the Cubs, and in 2001 he pitched in the Northwest League in Boise, which isn't even a full season league. He was 8-2 with a 2.98 ERA.
Sure. How old?
He was 20 when the Cubs traded him. And they immediately went to Kane County.
Yeah,
because that was the affiliate of the Marlins, and went 10-2 with a 1.83 ERA. Got promoted to the Florida State League and went 2-0 with a 1.80 ERA. And by 03, he was pitching in the big leagues.
It's kind of nuts.
And in the playoffs against the Cubs, and not well.
Yeah, he got lit up, and every time he showed his face. So there's that. But he won a ring. That is kind of crazy thing about Matt Clement, who himself was a very highly touted San Diego Padre prospect. matriculated to the Marlins, had a nice year in '02, if memory serves, and had a nice year in '03. It was, it was hard to, it's not exactly like, trading Josh Donaldson, who 6 years later develops, but,
Yeah.
Nobody really knew that Willis was legit, and Clement was good, and Clement was a solid number 4 in the '03 Cubs until he couldn't sack it up and come into pitch on short days rest, but he was otherwise an innings eater and, very effective.
At some point in 2002, Andy MacPhail bragged the much maligned farm system had produced 2 rookies of the year. They were Eric Hinsky and Dontrell Willis. It's like, Andy, does it count if they win Rookie of the Year for a different organization? What a way to brag about all your prospects. Oh, you should see the guys we trade to other teams. They're amazing.
So Dontrell was the subsequent year's Rookie of the Year in the National League?
Yeah, 2003.
I must have known that at one point. And '02, Hinsky won it in the American League.
Well, Hinsky probably won it before then, right?
I thought he won it in '02. Somehow I'm
right.
like getting my synapses
right. So
are
back to back?
the
Cubs went back to back.
In different leagues.
Hinsky in '02, Dontrell in '03.
Yeah. Well, in Hinsky, you know who the Cubs got for Hinsky? I don't know why I remember this, but I want to say Scott Chasson. Do you have to pronounce it with that French affect like I just did? Who?
It's worse than that. They traded for Miguel Cairo.
Miguel Cairo, second time around. Like, there was Miguel Cairo, the young prospect that came up in '97, and the Devil Rays plucked in the expansion draft, and he did okay. Comes around.
Yeah, and this was the '01, right, when they tried to sneak him through waivers, and the Cardinals grabbed him. Remember
That's
that?
right. Yeah. You mentioned that before. Somehow I was not clear on those details, but
so that was a great trade for the Cubs.
Yeah, we got to get Cairo back. But so why did I think of Scott Chasson? That's just something that I fabricated.
Because you just like to say the name,
right? Somehow I had him linked with Eric Hinsky.
Let's see what the Cubs traded for Scott Chasson.
And Chasson, hey kids, this might be relevant. Pretty sure Chasson was in on the 2002 Cubs.
The Cubs took him in the Rule 5 draft in 2000.
Okay.
They never traded him for anybody because they basically they released him 4 years.
All in my head. Somehow this nebulous Scott Chasson.
Well, I don't know. He had been an A, so maybe you.
Yeah, it's fine.
The two somehow.
Either way.
But hey, the Hinsky thing worked out for the Cubs. They brought him back as their assistant hitting coach. Is that what he was on the World Series team? When he was,
I think so,
100 pounds bigger than he had been. That was great. But he got to jump up and down on the field with everybody. So, way to go, Eric.
There's that. Well, I think if I could throw in a 6th fun fact, just random, popped into my head because I saw his face. Want to say it's the first time in his career that Currywood did not miss a start. So it was like, okay, we all holding our breaths. This guy always got hurt. But he made 33 starts. One more than Matt Clement.
Hinsky wasn't really that good.
Right. Now, it's like funny that he won Rookie of the Year, but it doesn't mean shit. It's almost like our friend Bob Hamlin.
His rookie season was his best year.
It's like a Joe Charbonneau, Bob Hamlin,
He was league average or below most of his seasons in the big leagues. A couple of good years he had. He was a part-time player. So, whatever.
Yeah. Well, so much for Eric Hinsky.
Cubs had a big addition to their bullpen. A guy who had made an emergency start for them the year before. And then he would go on to be a key member of the 2003 Cubs.
Let me, so there's a connection here where Carlos Zambrano we talked to 0-1 where a young babyface Zambrano came up the same week as Juan Cruz. Both made their debuts against the Brewers. Cruz was a little bit more polished, and Zambrano looked really good, though. But, he had that attitude. Let's also bear in mind that the Cubs pitching coach during this time was Oscar Acosta.
Yeah.
Who, to his credit, completely took Will Oman to shreds because that cock was walking around like he was, the glibest guy around. But he also wasn't very kind to Carlos Zambrano. And it felt like Zambrano kind of was strutting around like he was going to make the team. It looked like he did. He had it wrapped up, and he got just lit up in his last appearance in Mesa. And so at the last minute, he got sent down to start the 0-2 season, and that basically threw a lifeline to Borowski, the guy who was most famous for the previous September, as you say, in a scorching August Saturday afternoon with Barry Bonds in the midst of his roid rage, just sweat just pouring off the brim of his cap.
That's when
But Borowski,
he became Sweaty Joe from the very beginning.
Yeah. But he seized the opportunity, I want to say. I'm trying to pull up Borowski's numbers. Yeah, he pitched in 73 games in 0-2. 95 in the 2/3 innings, a 2.73 ERA. He only had 2 saves because six-fingered fat bastard, they had to justify trading for Alfonseca, so he was the titular closer. But Borowski set himself up quite nicely for the subsequent season when the opportunity arose, when Alfonseca just obviously proved that he couldn't. And I guess the nice, end of the story is that Zambrano did get called up after doing his penance in the minors and, earned his way back up and became a very effective reliever, I want to say, in 0-2 down the stretch, and then went into the bullpen, or it went into the rotation in 0-3. And if I look it up, I'll see that Zambrano did start 16 games, but he also pitched in 32. So, and yeah, decent numbers. He's ended up throwing 108 innings. So I would be willing to bet that a lion's share of Carlos's innings came from August and September. And he was only 21 years old too.
So
he almost threw as many innings as prior that year.
Yeah, if you get to that, it was a somewhat significant debut.
I was a little bit all over the map there. Let's unpack some.
Well, I brought up Sweaty Joe because when they put him in the bullpen in 0-2, there were some fans, me, who was not all that excited to see Joe. Because our only exposure to him had been in August. He literally made an emergency start, came up from Iowa. The Cubs were clinging to a 1.5 game lead in the wild card over Houston, and I think 2 maybe over the Giants. And they were playing the Giants.
That's pretty good recall. It sounds about right. It tracks. And Joe proceeded.
Yeah, actually, things were really bunched. Okay, so the Cubs they were leading the wild card. This has the other.
What's the date? What's the date on this? Mid-August? I know I was golfing in DeKalb that day.
They were leading the division. They had the best record in the National League. 66-49. Game and a half over the Astros. You mix in the Diamondbacks were leading the West, but the Dodgers were 2 behind. The Giants were 2 behind. The Phillies were 2.5 behind. Atlanta. So all these teams fighting for.
And in this season, in which, how I say, the Cubs had very good production from all 5 of their starters, apparently didn't have much depth.
Well, who knows? Maybe rainouts. Maybe there was just a bunch of games piled up on each other. But Sweaty Joe came up, and he was going to make this start. And he got through the first, okay. But in the second inning, he struggled a little bit, gave up 6 runs, including a 3-run homer to Barry Bonds that 21 years later has still not landed.
It's gone into orbit.
It's orbiting over the north side of Chicago somewhere.
Yeah, it's got a path.
So
not a fan, not a favorable first.
Like, oh, look at this asshole's back.
Right.
And he turned into one of the most beloved Cub relievers
of all time. And and he did it under away from the spotlight in '02. I think maybe I had kind of forgotten the extent to which he just went to work in '02 for a shitty team, right? With a bunch of shitty attitudes like Alou and McGriff, who were like high-fiving when they were, not having to play, according to some reporter.
Joe Borowski is from Bayonne, New Jersey.
Yeah.
He's Chuck Wepner's kid. Is that right? No, that's probably not right.
It's Chuck Wepner.
The boxer, the Bayonne Bomber, right? Did I get that right?
Maybe.
Fought Ali.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, he fit. Bayonne, if I'm not mistaken, is very blue collar. I think Joe comes from a family of firefighters. Maybe he fit right in Chicago, right? Like automatic honorary Chicago.
Imagine,
his name's Borowski.
Imagine what
sweats a lot.
What best friends Joe Borowski and Kyle Schwarber would have been. They just spent all their time. He'd have had to have gone over and pried them off the fire trucks across
Eating
the
lunch
street.
on the ladder.
Couldn't start the game until you got those two to come back. Do you know which team drafted Joe Borowski?
Was it the Braves, White Sox?
It was the White Sox.
Okay. I had that rattling around in there.
He made a rapid ascent to the big leagues. He got drafted in 1989.
Wow.
Although he had pitched, he made it to the big leagues the first time in '95 for the Orioles. So it didn't.
Well, okay.
But still, he hadn't really established himself 12 years later until he did with the Cubs, and then he had
the best years of his career, and he basically blew his arm out in doing it. Right? Is that a fair characterization?
Oh, I don't.
Because I'm still staring at his '02 numbers. That's a yeoman's work, really. 2.73 ERA, 95 2/3 inning for a shitty team. Finished 25 games. And then just totally. We've already covered it. '03. We gave Joe his due, but just to reiterate, elevated it when they needed him to. Because it's like, fuck, we can't trust Alfonso. And he did even better. He didn't pitch as many innings because he was a closer, but his ERA went down 10th of a point. 33 saves. And then, 04. God bless him. Jesus, he kept like dragging his dead arm out to the mound as late as '08 for the Tribe. He actually had 40. I'm sorry, Jesus, I'm selling him short. He had 40. He led the league with 45 saves in '07. Did you remember that? Sweaty Joe. Damn.
No.
I totally missed the narrative. Yeah, I missed the narrative on that, man. Good for him. I don't pay attention to the American League in my defense nearly as much as I do or ever have in the National League. But, he did not necessarily give the last of his arm to the Cubs. He was awesome there. Must have, he got hurt, got it reconstructed, whatever.
Yeah,
he saved 81 games over 2 seasons for the Marlins and Indians, 06, 07.
I do remember pitching for the Indians. I do not remember that 36 save season with the Marlins.
Yeah,
but
those are his 2 best save seasons. Hey, that's why I like doing this. I'm not afraid to admit that I didn't know I thought I knew Joe Borowski. I guess it's just more contained with his life with the Cubs that sort of developed. So I'm happy to see that. Joe looks like he's got the full pension. Hopefully he was able to put away a lot of that money. Probably got a nice deal there. Got maybe snookered somebody in. Even after the 45 save season.
I think we want to talk about the superstar rookie and his major league debut, and by that, of course, we're talking about Hee-Seop Choi.
In '02, September, right?
Hee-Seop, going to be the Cub first baseman for a decade, and he made his debut on September 3rd as a pinch hitter against the Brewers at Wrigley Field in a 10-1 win. And he struck out. When did he get his first hit? Against the Cardinals in St. Louis. Attaboy, he said. Well, that was his first home run. Yeah, and it was also his first hit. Just like Jorge Soler. Kind of.
So, McGriff was the opening day first baseman, right? For the only time. I don't, know that we need to say anything more about his. I mean, he got off to a horrible start in '02. It was just when I think of the '02 Cubs, I think about how we did have hope for those prospects, although it was a little bit dispiriting and maybe concerning to get an entire full season of Corey Patterson before he was like, ready. Because I think Corey had over 500 at bats, 628 plate appearances, 284 on base. I mean, he was 22, but I think starting to get a little bit concerned. But again, it was a team that was coming up in retrospect. Sammy carried them, and they had great career years out of some pitchers. But they did bring McGriff along, even though he faded. They signed Moises. They picked up this Alex Gonzalez, who had a great glove and couldn't hit, except like when there was a chance to end a game with a walk-off homer, because I think he did that 3 times in '02. But from opening day, it's just like Alou. That's why I always was bitter. I'll give Alou his propers because he bounced back in '03. But I was just enraged by, he came as a free agent and he was just out of shape. It was so bad that I would actually suggest, I can point you. The game itself won't matter. I certainly hardly remember it, but it was the Friday afternoon Cubs Sox game. I was particularly revved up, Andy, as I sat in about the first, second, or third row of the left field bleachers. And I couldn't even remember all the things that I said, but I just would not relent on Moises for basically just gold bricking it up until that point. And he was pissed. I don't care either. But people were telling me, dude, he's kind of, he's kind of looking over, getting annoyed. And I'm just like, no quarter zone. I was saying all kinds of meatball shit. You don't have any heart. You show up here, you take the money. I was just so mad because the season just went sideways from the beginning. It was supposed to be a good season. They won 87 or whatever games the year before. Kerry Wood didn't miss a start. We got, we got a contribution from MacPhail, but McGriff was a dog. Alou was a dog. And it cost Baylor his job. It was just misery. It was just one of the, I don't know how you'd rank it in that sort of a context where it was just not fun really from the beginning. We got some relief when Don Baylor got fired. And I think, and I'm pretty sure we could find it, but yeah, Bruce Kim immediately went on a 5-game winning streak, which echoed the history of Jim Essien, who did the same thing when he stepped in. But I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this. It just came back to Alou and how disappointing he was that entire, and McGriff, the two of those guys. They could have led by example, but
I don't know why you think that Fred got off to a bad start. In April, he slugged .289. That's pretty good. It's funny. So if you look at his stats in '01 and '02 for the Cubs, they're good.
Of course, that's McGriff's trick.
Right. They're very hollow. In '02, with that terrible start and basically helping bury the Cubs right away.
Exactly.
He hit .273. He slugged .505. He hit 30 homers and drove in 103 runs.
Incredible numbers, man. You look at I didn't catch you said the OPS or on base 30 homers though. Jeez.
In '01, he gets to the Cubs with them still in the race and he comes up with chances to win games. He doesn't do shit.
Except hit that one double off of that submarining lefty Mike Myers when Steve McMichael threatened Angel Hernandez. But that's the
when you look at his numbers in 49 games with the Cubs that year, 12 homers, 41 RBIs, 942 OPS. So I'm always reminded of that when people are like, oh, he has to be in the Hall of Fame. It's like, nah, we had the Fred McGriff experience. It's all numbers and it's no impact.
You could say that our sample size was small, and you can't necessarily just extrapolate that. Maybe he had meaningful hits through the years with the Braves, the Blue Jays, the Padres. I mean, he played everywhere. It just seemed very hollow, like you said. That's the word for it.
And I shudder to think if these really mattered or not. But he has really good playoff numbers: 303, 385, 532, 10 homers, 37 RBIs in 50 games.
Right.
He won a World Series with the Braves.
Yep, that was a huge trade. That was the only. Well, they got him midway through the '93 trade. The Braves did. You remember that? And then the press box blew up on fire. It was on fire
Yeah.
as soon as McGriff got there, and they were like 15 games behind the Giants and Barry Bonds and Dusty, and they eventually ran him down. The Braves themselves, of course, got knocked out by the Phillies in that year's LCS. But the story was how they ran. Both teams went over 100 games, but the Braves are way back. Giants got off to a huge start in Dusty's first year. Braves got McGriff. That was the big deadline deal, and they got hot and ran the Giants without the Giants slumping. It wasn't a Cubs Mets. But yeah, McGriff stuck around. He was on the only Atlanta Braves World Series team prior to last year. So. And again, I refer you to the Harold Baines principle. If Harold's in, then you might as well put McGriff in. I've got a fun game to point to you. If you can pull up the Cubs schedule in 02, can I refer you to the events of Saturday, June 22nd?
Yeah.
Can you find the game there?
No,
if you look,
it's hard to find the game.
You see Friday, June 21st, and then Sunday, June 23rd.
Must have been a rain out.
Andy, what happened at June?
Yeah, must have been a rain out. I distinctly remember watching the game or watching the coverage of the game, and all of a sudden the Cubs and the Cardinals were coming out of the field, and Joe Girardi had a microphone.
Well, first of all, the game was delayed. The start of the game.
Right.
There was no broadcast of the game. The pregame is what you were watching.
Right, the pregame, right, because they never started the actual game. And I believe what Joe said was due to a tragedy in the Cardinals family, the game has been postponed. And they found out later that Darryl Kyle was found tits up in a Chicago hotel room.
The downtown Hilton where most opposing teams play.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the room that's the room they gave me for the Cub convention every year after that.
No, not the Chicago Hilton Towers, not the Kitty O'Shea's, or the other side.
Oh, not the Hilton Towers?
Or maybe it's the Westin. The Westin. It's right. It's right there by Marina City. That's where a lot of them put. That's the hotel, though. I went to the game the next day. It was on Sunday Night Baseball. And I have to say, at the time, to me, this seemed weird, but I dare not say anything because, I don't want to draw stares. But they played the game without Gary Presti on the organ.
Yeah.
And without, because this is, what year? 2002. So this is pre-2006 bleacher configuration. It was still the only accessory to the original scoreboard was that rectangular digital who's up and whatnot underneath there. Only in like the center 40% of the width of the scoreboard. That thing was turned off, and like the ball, and like how are we honoring Derek? Was Derek Kyle? Was he an Amish?
Darryl always hated message boards. Right. In his honor, we're turning it off.
Right? Yeah, it wasn't electricity because it was a night game, so you had to have the lights on. All right.
Weren't the lights? The lights were dim though, right? They were only at half. Couldn't the flags were at half mast, and the light bulbs were at half power.
But
in honor of Darryl.
It didn't I didn't want to be disrespectful, so I didn't really wonder aloud. But I'm at the game. It's a nice night. The Cubs won, I believe. I think they beat Jason Simontacci, or am I off on my errors? Anyway, they did. I remember that. But I just thought, okay, fine. I guess we don't have music between innings, and they didn't really even do music. They weren't even pumping in music in 02. It was all Gary. But now Gary got the night off, I think. So maybe he.
Well, not all Gary. Were they still? Was 02? Still playing jump before games?
That came and went. So they had an A45, then it left, then it came back. I don't know what the history of that. Back. Yeah, it was. So, but yeah, that was interesting. So you were watching it. I was listening to the radio, and I remember Pat Hughes, in retrospect, did a really good job of being propaganda minister. Obviously, the people on the inside, word had gotten to them at some point. They didn't learn when Joe left his cryptic message in front of 38,000 people, but they stalled is what they did. I'm hearing there's a delay, blah, blah, blah. It was as we all know, most day games at Wrigley start at 1:20. This could have been a 12. 15 because it was a Saturday. But 10, 15 minutes past, the game's not started, and like all the media coverage, they're running out of stalling tactics. And so, yeah, eventually, here we go. Here's Joe Girardi of the Cubs sending everybody home without anybody playing because some guy died at the hotel a few miles south.
Was Stone back?
Stone was back, I think.
Because we only got the Joe Carter experience for 01.
It was Joe Carter was definitely 01. I can't remember again if it was 2001 or 0102. It was 2 seasons. I think Stoney might have been gone still. I think he came back in 03. Just in time. So I should know that. But I think we discovered it. I had always assumed
Joe Carter 2001 and 2002.
Got it. But it would have been a national broadcast, right?
The Saturday game?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was a Fox thing.
Oh, maybe Tom Brenneman.
Lending it all of its faux sobriety and seriousness. And tut-tutting. I just thought of another game in 02 I'd like to quickly point out. It happened on the South Side. I wrote about this on a very short-lived blog that Forklift started a couple of years ago, Fully Croisen. We were kind of doing, I forget, just shitty games, shitty obscure games, writing about them. But I would bring it to the Friday afternoon, June 28th, Comiskey Park. I don't think I've talked about it. I've written about it. Kerry Wood takes the mound. This is before Kerry Wood led the Cubs to within a few innings of a pennant before he mystifyingly walked Brian Banks with a 2-run lead in the 5th inning. Here, a little bit different story. We were actually late to the game. Cubs were scoring some runs. I remember showing up in time to see Corey Patterson with a 2 or 3-run homer. At some point, the game was 8-0.
3-run homer.
Yeah. Look at what inning? Second, third inning. Let me pull it up.
Top of the second.
This is pre-reconfigured Comiskey. And so basically we're in the upper deck about 400 feet from the sun itself and, very far from the action. But I remember slowly getting a little bit enraged by two things. One, the Cubs were up 8-0, but Kerry Wood started walking guys. And number two, a lot of dipshit Cub fans that were not paying any attention to any of this. And they're all around and they're all standing up and everyone's getting shit-faced. I was drinking too, and I was having a good time. And one of my friends in the group actually had the nerve to feel sorry for our White Sox friend who actually got us the tickets and saw the Sox down 8-0. And I always shot him a look because I learned as a kid, you don't feel sorry for the opposition till the game's over. Sure enough, that would come back to haunt us. But I was mad at these Cub fans, and I'm like, you don't even know what Kerry was. He's walking people. What does he just put the ball over the plate? And basically, it went where the Cubs up 8-0 after 3 innings, managed to be down 2 runs 3 innings later. It was almost breathtaking how quickly it happened. But it was really, and I love Kerry Wood. I do think sometimes he's a little, I hate to say it, a little overrated sometimes. People really, really love Kerry Wood, and he did some great things, but a little bit star-crossed and often sometimes a little frustrating. Certainly on this day, I was not a big Kerry Wood fan.
Well, I got a special treat for you. Since you mentioned Kerry Wood, I got a special guest. Pat Hughes is here. He's going to talk for an hour and a half about this strikeout game.
That's the events of May 3rd, 1998. Let me tell you. The end of the story will just be that the Cubs, the White Sox win going away. It was laughable how quickly they came back. And I remember just drunk, sunburnt, angry, frustrated, just over it, walking out of the park and just yelling at Sox fans, big deal, you beat the Cubs, they sucked. I'm just
the Cubs were 32-44 going into that game.
They were bad. So it's all we had. And the Cubs Sox thing was still new.
Yeah.
Somewhat. Had a little bit of novelty. I would go to the games at Wrigley pretty much, back in those days. I swore to myself, and I've lived up to it. I have been to Sox Park since then, never to see a Cubs game, because I swore on that day, because I was just so aggravated with everything. I said, I will never come to this ballpark to watch the Cubs play the White Sox ever again. And I've held to it 20 years later.
So the last Cubs Sox game I went to at Comiskey, what's it called? Payday Loans Field? Is
Low
that what it is?
interest field.
2003 or four. Three. Had to be three. Because Sammy Sosa and Troy O'Leary both homered. Now, do you know?
Had to be '03, by the way, because O'Leary was not on the team any
That's
other year.
right.
So it was the year after the game I just discussed. Got it. All right.
Gave it away. But who scored the final run of the 2003 League Championship Series?
The aforementioned.
Troy O'Leary had a home run.
That's right.
In
Talking
the
about
eighth.
garbage time homer. Yeah.
I believe. You know who
It's
made
true.
the last out?
Yeah, we've talked about it multiple times, I'm sure. Gabor.
That's way to fire your big gun at the end there, dustbag.
They were down 4. It was
Doesn't matter. You might as well have sent the bat boy up as to send up Gabor.
So besides Troy O'Leary's, one of his rare shining moments at U.S. Comiscular in '03, anything else noteworthy?
Yeah, there were a couple of things. One was one of the reasons I never went back. I never wanted to go back for a Cubs Sox game again because it's
the worst.
Yeah, the fans are weird, but I didn't go for a couple of years, and then of course the Sox had the ultimate Father's Sunday out at the park where the Lagoo boys attacked.
Former third base Cubs coach Tom Gamboa.
I almost said Tony Muser, who also was on that coaching staff, but did not get attacked by them.
So this would have been in 2002. Very timely, by the way. Let's tether the current season.
Oh, that happened in 02. Okay, so we went the year after that.
In late 02.
Okay, now this makes sense to me because I went, and one of the things I didn't like about it was we had to stay in our fucking seats. One of the nice things about going to Comiskey was you would buy tickets for the upper deck and you'd never go up there. You could just hang out in that huge center field concourse and stand there and watch the game, and you had beer, any beer you wanted was right behind you, any food, and we never caused any problems. We just hung out and had a good time. Well, once that happened,
oh my gosh.
And I believe they still do it, which really pisses Sox fans off. They force the upper deck people, they don't have access to that part of the park. They just have to go up.
Is that what happened with the Legues all the way up in the nose?
That was part of the response to that.
Of course.
Because that wasn't even they also they beat up an ump too, right? Sox fans attacked an umpire. The Legues weren't the only incident they had.
It could be. Okay.
The Legues. Somebody's like, people were Cub fans. Like, yeah, of course they were. That's why they were shirtless at a Sox game.
I believe
the Royals because they loved the Cubs so much.
And I think I mentioned this when the wheel spun in 1996, but I was chatting with Danny Darwin in batting practice at that point, an aged veteran for the Astros, because I recalled a story from about 19 years earlier where he had gotten punched on a CTA bus after a Sox game by whom I can only assume was another Sox fan. So throw that on the pile. Danny appreciated the memory.
You were just chatting with Danny Darwin during batting practice? Were you guys down by the cage?
No, I was in the front row of the bleachers, and he was shag. Everybody would shag flies, right? I don't know how it works now. By the way, I took my family to the Cubs game on Sunday. My wife's actually out of town, girls' weekend, so I took my sons and my son and my daughter and my son's friend. Got down there, got a perfect parking spot. Greatest spot.
Yeah, we know. You took a picture of it.
I know. And then I accidentally deleted it, but it was blurry anyway. But it was at Racine and Waveland, literally 1100 West Waveland. And but it was easy to get parking in the neighborhood because we were down there at about 11:10 because the gates open 11:20, and I can get down to the wall and get my kid and his friend a baseball from a player. And they didn't have batting practice that day, so I had 2 whole hours to kill at Wrigley Field.
How about this? Next time you go, get there early, dress one of your kids up like a squirrel, and have them run around the warning track. Somebody did that in Pittsburgh yesterday.
Right.
That was during the game.
Well, that was PNC. Reckless. Right. But on this, of course you would batting. So I haven't really gone to much batting practice in 20 years, but like you would see, like it wasn't just like outfielders shagging flies and
pitchers used to do
just
it.
Like relief pitchers like to hang out and like to yuck it up with idiots like me. So Danny Darwin, no exception.
Yeah, to answer your question, do the Cubs still shag flies? No, they have a simulated shagging lab. They do it in there.
They took over the old top golf course in Itasca after they moved to the Schaumburg location. They got plenty of space there.
That is not to be confused with the shagging lab that Mark Grace had, which was not simulated.
Correct. Right. Yeah. This one didn't have the 3 gold gloves on the mantle.
The table in there was reinforced. Just in case he was in a slump. But bump.
There we go. So sorry to go that far around the bend. I guess the common thread is White Sox fans and alcohol tend to lead to violence or something, and everyone else suffers, right? You can't have good things, you can't have nice things because the Leagues came all the way from the upper deck to attack poor old Tom.
Well, they didn't come down from the upper deck. That was the problem. They had upper deck tickets, but they were just sitting down by the
chilling in the beer garden,
right? Because it was a Sox game. There's no fucking fans there,
right? Especially in 2002, things were pretty bleak there.
My friend Neil, the one I would go to Sox games with, always preferred. Like, he wanted the Sox to win. He was in heaven after, they win in 2005, and then within a couple of years they're bad again. And he loved it because then the crowds went away. And he just liked to have access to any part of the park that he wanted to sit in.
He was used to it.
He's like, they won a World Series. I saw it. Now go away. I want to sit down behind the first base dugout and
baseball. Well, Sox fans had to deal with. I'm pretty sure they probably had higher attendance the first 5 years of that ballpark because everybody wanted to check it out. But within, and they had a good team. But then by the time Terry Bevington came along, and then the strike happened, and strike happened first in Bevington, and then that place was a mausoleum, and Uncle Jerry finally shaved down the upper deck, and it's still it's a fine place to watch a game from the lower deck because it's a modern ballpark. You don't have any missing angles, and I've been there, as I've already stated. Well, I was there for plenty of these Cubs Sox games until 2002, like five or six.
Yeah, everybody wanted to go down and be like, they really situated this park so that you can't see the skyline?
And they went out of their way to do it. I researched that. Most teams, I don't have it memorized, but most teams' home plates are in the same geographic. I can't remember now what it was. Wherever Wrigley is, which is basically southwest.
Yeah, they're all designed so that the right fielder goes blind looking into the sun late in the afternoon. Yeah.
And there are exceptions. And Wrigley's and Comiskey's one of them.
Well, didn't they set it up so that because old Comiskey was there, weren't they like butt to butt?
Yeah, maybe.
But for no apparent reason because they were tearing the old one down.
Oh, right. Yeah, I don't know, but I actually took the time to analyze where home plate was geographically in real. I'm like, wow, they went out of their way to make it an exception.
I always thought they did it because they were going to put those big billboards up, and that way they were blocking the projects were still there. They were blocking those.
The Robert Taylor homes.
And they would never have to take any heat from people like, why don't you take down the fucking billboard so we can see the skyline? It's like, well, you can't see the skyline from there anyway. So leave them up. It's more cash for Jerry.
For whatever reason, it's not the worst dump around. It's not, it's like I said,
it's a lot better than it was.
It's a better place to watch a ball game than Wrigley from the lower deck. I'll say that, but it should be. It's 70 years newer.
Well, what frustrated people was, what did Camden Yards open the very next year?
The year before. The year after.
Yeah. And so everybody's like, "Oh, look how much better this is than the than the cookie cutter, bland, it was state of Illinois funded piece of shit that
the whole thing,
Sox built." And they basically spent the next, what is it, almost 30 years now, right? More than 30 years.
Yeah.
Fixing all the stuff that they could have got right in the first place.
Yeah.
And it does look better. I mean, it's a nice looking.
Yeah.
It's a nice looking park. It's still dull, but it's the White Sox, and they, it's a fitting park for a franchise with the most boring nickname you could possibly have.
Piece of clothing,
a white pair of socks. How exciting!
That 70% of it is obscured.
Their mascot should just be a pair of sandals with the socks sticking out of them. So
you were coming in hard with the Legay jokes.
And the number two, the second thing that happened was there were some drunk Cub fans there. We had wandered down away from our seats and we were getting beer and we were kind of down like in a concourse. And I think it was when Sammy hit his homer, or maybe Troy O'Leary may have robbed someone of a home run, believe it or not. I think he jumped his fat ass up and he caught a ball right over the wall, which the wall must have been like 4'6" back then. Did
somebody leave a trampoline on the warning track?
And this one drunk Cub fan was like super excited. And he was like one of those guys who has to like turn and get in everybody's face and be like,
high five everybody for like
and I just had like a gray shirt on. I didn't have a Cub shirt on. I didn't have anything. And so he just assumed I was a Sox fan. And he's in my face screaming at me. And I go, just shut the fuck up. And he gets all pissed and he rears back. He's going to take a swing at me, and he's drunk, and I expect him to
Right.
fall down while he's trying to do it. And he swung wildly and missed. And before I could do anything, there was like 4 security guards had literally like picked him up off the ground and were like just they were
Sure.
carrying him out, and he was gone. And it happened so fast. Neil and I are standing there like, did they? There was nobody there all of a sudden. We're like, did that just happen? What happened?
Beautiful. They probably had their eye on that clown
Oh, I'm
for
sure
a
they
little
did.
bit. Yeah.
Although usually they have their hands full at Cubs Sox games with the it's usually White Sox women fans getting in fights. Lot of drunk White Sox
I've
fans
seen a
punching
few
each other.
double XL Canerco jerseys swinging fists on YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been. Was that pre-Canerco? Or right
Oh,
about
no, because Canerco hit a grand slam and another homer, and he also got hit in the head by.
So that was after the Mike Cameron trade.
Yes. Yeah. No, yeah, because Canerco actually came up with the Dodgers. He was supposed to be
He
the
was a
heir apparent to
catching
Eric Karros,
prospect, and then he fucked up his hip.
and then he was
That's why he was so
Karros' backup,
slow.
and
He had
then
the
he got
terrible hip.
traded to the Reds. He got traded to the Reds for oddly enough Cameron in late '98, and Canerco was briefly a Red. No, he got traded to Cameron when he went to the Sox, like you said, but he got traded from the Dodgers to the Reds late in the '98 season, and then the Reds flipped him, and he became a local legend. But yeah, so he was
Fine.
very much
of all those guys. Canerco always seemed like the most normal one.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always fine with the fact that
hard to hate him.
he was the guy that everybody adored. There were some other guys like AJ and Scotty Fabulous I could do without.
Yeah, let's not go down that rabbit hole.
So we talked about a exciting rookie debut in 2002. Maybe the most talked about rookie debut that year being Hee-Seop Choi. But there was also another one. And if you are an obvious Shirts fan, and I don't know why you would be, you might know him from
famous
Shirts as I Still Love Mark Pryor. Or something. I forget.
Okay. I mean, I like him. I don't hate him. I feel bad for him. He's a star-crossed, tragic kind of a figure. His pain is very much associated with ours, his fandom. But you're right. He did make his debut.
May 22nd, 2002.
I was there. I was in attendance. So I got to see Kerry Wood and Mark Pryor's. No, I'm sorry. Kerry Wood's Wrigley debut. But, yeah, a lot of hype, too. Pryor had been drafted the year before in 01. Obviously, kind of fell into the Cubs' lap due to their own ineptitude from the 2000 season. That's how Kerry Wood fell in their lap in 95 because they sucked in 94. But there was some tension because I think, what was it? Pryor and Mark Teixeira were the top two. That was the concern. And because of the back and forth between the American League and National League, the Twins had the first pick. And
not Mark Teixeira.
Right. They did not take Mark Teixeira or Mark Pryor. They took the guy that ended up having a better career than both of them. Although Teixeira had a pretty decent career. They took Joe Mauer, the local guy, because he was cheap. And
I didn't realize Teixeira was in there. He went 5th to the Rangers.
Oh, then I have it wrong. See, in my own memory, for some reason, around the time of that draft, I thought it was like Pryor Teixeira 1-2, but the Twins are cheap and they're going to take the local St. Paul kid, Joe Mauer.
Yeah,
it went Pryor.
They took the local kid,
future
probably go to the Hall of Fame.
Who was 3rd and 4th in that draft then?
Oh, they were great.
Must have been some other cheapskate organizations because I remember like Teixeira and Pryor were the top prospects.
Number 3, the Rays took the great DeJuan Brazelton.
Okay, I remember the
number
name.
4, the Phillies took future White Sox pitcher Gavin Floyd.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so Joe Mauer went number 1. And one of the big deals was they couldn't go super cheap on Joe because they had to buy him out of his commitment to play not just baseball, but football.
Because he was a catcher, so of course he played football.
At Florida State. He was like the number 1 rated high school quarterback. And he was going to go play for Bobby Bowden.
Wow.
And the Twins had to come up with the cash.
Okay, a little bit. Probably not
keep
Pryor
him in
money.
baseball.
Pryor had of course, the pedigree already. He seemed like a finished product. As soon as the Cubs drafted him, he went out and blanked whomever for Southern Cal in the World Series. And then the Cubs actually, for once in the Lynch MacPhail era, did the prudent thing and basically just didn't really push him the rest of '01 because he had pitched a lot for USC. I don't think they sent him a rookie ball. Right? They treated him very nicely in the beginning or whatever. I mean, if Pryor wanted to pitch, well, they probably still wouldn't have let him because they hadn't hired Dusty Baker yet.
He made,
but yeah. So the next year he starts his first Cub appearance. I'm pretty sure it was April of that year for probably Iowa, right?
Yeah, he didn't pitch at all in 2001, and in 2002 he started the season at West Tennessee,
Double-A,
and he made 6 starts. He was 4-1 with a 2.60 ERA, and then they said, okay, well, that's not a challenge.
We're starting to
promoted him to Iowa, and he made 3 starts, and he was 1-1 with a 1.65 ERA, 24 strikeouts in 16 innings.
Yep.
And they said, all right, that's enough of that shit. And they brought him up, and he never had to pitch in the minors again. Oh no, he did.
Wait, he did
pitched
really
in the minors
rehab assignments
in 2003 and not in 2003, in 2004.
All rehab assignments, which is part of the story.
And 2006,
nothing. He was never sent down.
2010 and 2011
right.
and 2012
Oh my God.
and 2013.
Oh, stop! You're breaking my heart. It's worse than I remember. Jesus, poor guy.
But yeah, so he broke in against the Pirates, and he threw 6 innings, gave up only 4 hits, 2 runs.
Nice.
Struck out 10.
All
in a 7-4 Cub win.
All that I can remember about it was that Don Baylor, who loved to bunt, let me tell you,
he loved bunting more than opening day.
He did. I did. Very well done. I mean, I think back to Baylor's first 2 seasons, in which in both seasons his daily double, as it were Eric Young and Ricky Gutierrez. We've talked about Young had a great year in 2000. The Cubs sucked, and then he was terrible in '01 when they could have used him. Gutierrez was pretty consistent, but it seemed countless the times in the first inning of games if Eric Young would reach base. This seems inconceivable today, and it should have been inconceivable then, but I don't know that we were as outraged. But in the first inning, Baylor would constantly have Gutierrez bunt Young to second. So in Pryor's debut, I don't know what happened in the first few innings, but I just know that when he comes up to bat, it's first and second. Right before he comes up to bat, the 8th place hitter, whoever it is up with first and second, and I think 1 out. And this it mystifies me that you would just put this kind of pressure on your ace pitcher when he's like going to hold a bat in his hands facing Major League pitching. Yeah. But he had his 8th place hitter sacrifice the runners to second and third. And Pryor was a great athlete. He had a few homers. He was just a good all around baseball player, but it still seemed ridiculous that Baylor would give up the 8th place hitter's bat to put Pryor there with a chance to knock in 2. I mean,
well, the Cubs, the 2002 Cubs were star-studded, and in his second career at bat, in the 4th inning, Bobby Hill reached base on an error on the first baseman.
Okay,
and then the great Augie Ojeda was up. While Augie was batting, Bobby stole second base.
Okay.
So Don Baylor's like, ooh, here we go. He has Augie bunt Bobby Hill to third base so that his rookie pitcher in his first game is now batting with a runner at third and 1 out.
1 out. All right, so I had it off a little bit, but hey, buddy, just take this 89 mile an hour pitch and then loft it about 280 feet if you could.
Pryor grounded out the second baseman, did not score the run. And then Corey Patterson came up, and he grounded out to the shortstop, and the Cubs didn't score. But great job. It's one of those things where, hey, Don, the runner's already in scoring position. You don't really need to move him to third with you have nobody out. How about you just have Augie actually try to get a hit?
Or bring the guy over, and maybe he does get a hit. Like maybe pull him to the right side. So that's actually worse than what I had remembered, which was the first and second 1 out.
So
I think it's worse.
So the 02 Cubs were full of interesting draft picks. Bobby Hill, who had been a White Sox draft pick who refused to sign,
Can we revisit that real quick since we've been a little bit White Sox intensive?
Sure,
But
we'll
as
get
well,
back. We'll do more Mark Pryor, but yeah, we can
was Hill a
detour here.
first round pick of the Sox or second round? He was something. He was a high. He basically was his agent board. He played.
Yeah,
he
Scott
pulled some
Boras.
shenanigans. That
He
just
was a
pissed
he
off.
was a second round pick in the '99 draft, and he was a junior at the University of Miami. So he could go back.
Which players don't often do after the junior year.
But I don't think Bobby just didn't. So yeah, and if you don't sign, you can just go back and play your senior year. I believe Bobby didn't sign with the White Sox, but didn't go back to Miami either.
Because
He's like hung out at the Boras Academy.
Okay.
Doing whatever.
He was a Miami Hurricane, maybe. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Yes,
All right.
he was a Miami Hurricane.
Okay.
Let's see. So second round.
And this is like, King of the Hill has been out for a couple of years, so we had to recalibrate. This is not that Bobby Hill. Kind of funny. But then, of course, as Cub fans, we were stoked because it would be the ultimate own if Bobby Hill, after
wanted him to be a
White
superstar.
Sox, right? Cubs
Just like we
drafted him.
can't wait for Nick Madrigal to be a superstar.
Oh, I'm done.
So Bobby Hill, was the 15th pick of the second round by the White Sox. Guys picked after him, who the White Sox could have had instead, include Cubs 2016 World Series champion
Chris Coughlin?
John Lackey.
I was
For
way
the
off.
Angels, who, just 3 years later would be, I don't know if he's Rookie of the Year, but he was a star in the 2002 World Series for the Angels.
Scott Spezio?
No, Lackey.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. I thought you were going to another one. Right. But right. He was a rookie in 02.
Yeah, that's about it. That's about the only guy in the second round that the Sox really missed out on.
And that's the 90. Did you say that? I'm sorry. That was the 99.
That was 99. In 2000, the Cubs drafted him also in the second round.
Yep, and signed him.
And they, of course, signed him because he didn't have anywhere else to go. With that second time around, he's got to sign.
And now he's a year older.
They drafted him ahead of superstars like Xavier Nady, who did play for the Cubs, right? Yeah.
Yeah, if we ever do, I think 2010, maybe Xavier Nady was a Cub.
Future Reds reliever Joel, that petter-ass Hanrahan.
Okay.
Lance Necro.
Yeah, I think that was Joe's kid, not Phil's. But
That's about it. It wasn't about Bubba Nelson, who had never played in the big leagues.
All right.
But he got picked after Tag Bozide from the Twins. But yeah, so Bobby Hill, he played a key point. He was a key member of the 2003 Cubs
because of the trade,
where he made the greatest contribution that he could have possibly made. He got his ass traded for Ramos Ramirez and Kenny Lofton. So
yeah,
thank you, Bobby.
That's right. So he made his debut. Hee-Seop Choi, as you mentioned earlier, made his debut. Pryor made his debut. Pryor was the real deal. And it was enticing. What do you go 6-6, right? And then he pulled his hammy, which is weird because we thought he was a perfect specimen.
Well, big calves probably put too much strain on his hammy.
So nobody was concerned. He didn't blow out his arm. I think his manager for the most part was Bruce Kim. It wasn't Baylor. Baylor was gone within a month after he made his debut. But yeah, so they shut him down, and then it was all right. Well, the Cubs sucked anyway. We'll see you next year, and we did. But
so the Cubs also on the 2002 team had, and this is going somewhere. They had another really high draft pick. They had the 10th pick of the 1995 draft on their roster.
So that's the Kerry Wood draft. Kerry Wood went 5th.
Yeah, so the 5th and the 10th pick of that draft.
On the 2002 Cubs. Who drafted this guy?
The Dodgers. No, Dodgers. Sorry. He played for the Dodgers later. The Pirates.
Played for the Pirates.
I thought he's already.
On the 02 Cubs, and he was a prospect?
He had been a prospect at one point.
Oh, Chad Hermanson.
Chad Hermanson played for the 2002 Cubs.
Pretty sure.
Who do you think Mark Pryor, the first batter Mark Pryor ever faced in the big leagues, was?
Chad Hermanson.
It was Chad Hermanson. When he's still playing with the Pirates.
His teammate later that year.
And did he strike out Chad Hermanson to start his big league career?
Did he?
He didn't. Chad Hermanson got a hit.
Oh.
I'm sure Chad reminded him of that after he got released and signed by the terrible 2002 Cubs. Yep. Was hanging out and said, I got my
I, I
You
do
want me to
recall
sign that ball for you, rookie? Huh?
for no good reasons. I do recall going to a wedding, so I can tell you it happened on a Saturday. But Chad Hermanson's only home run that year for the Cubs happened on a late September Saturday. I'm pretty sure. Did he have only one homer? He had. I'm sure of it. But
Oh, he hit 38 home runs for
no,
the 2002 Cubs.
one homer for the Cubs.
Drove in 179 runs. I forgot. What a great.
Well, now that's a fun fact though.
Yes,
So
one
Chad
homer and
Hermanson,
3 RBIs.
right, and that homer came in late September on a Saturday. I guarantee you.
He was terrible. He batted 209, which is like 20 points higher than Jason Hayward is currently hitting for the Cubs.
Wow, good comp.
Yes.
Yeah, and I will just guarantee you that it would have been on the I'm sure it was the penultimate game of the season that he had his sole home run as a Cub. But that's a fun fact that earlier in the season he was a member of the opposition and he was the first major league
batter Mark Prior ever faced.
That is a fun fact. By the way, Chad Hermanson minus 3.6 career WAR.
That's pretty not good. Mark Prior 6-6, 3.32 ERA, made 19 starts for the Cubs. 147 strikeouts, 116 innings, walked 38, gave up only 98 hits. ERA plus of 1.22 as a half-season rookie. Well, not a half, 19 starts. That was 2/3 of the season.
Yeah. Zambrano, who did not start the season with the Cubs, almost caught up to him in innings, but they would be horses. I thought you had mentioned also another fun fact. We talked about this before, so we have to bring it up. We talked about this off the air, like months ago, or in another podcast possibly. But in any event, Pryor, there's some connection with the guy that relieved Pryor in this game. That I think you unearthed that, so I should let you point that out, or should I? Because that was not a fact that I had known until you mentioned it. The guy that came in relief.
I gotta see what I did here.
Let's just say he had a son who was a pretty good football player.
Oh yes, that's right. Yeah, the first guy to relieve Mark Prior in the big leagues was fathered a future Hall of Fame NFL quarterback.
That's the way to phrase it.
That would be Pat Mahomes.
Right. And when you first told me that, I'm like, wait, no. Paul Mahomes was one of the guys
That's
that
not Paul
Epstein
Mahomes.
flipped. Right.
Pat Mahomes.
No, and I somehow escaped the fact that Pat Mahomes, the quarterback, his dad had was a pitcher, and he pitched for the Cubs.
Yeah, I think Pat Mahomes much better remembered pitching for the Mets and the Twins than the Cubs, but he did pitch for the Cubs. I think for 2 years actually.
But yeah, you dropped that nugget in that he actually relieved Pryor, which that's another fun fact. So Pryor's debut, plenty of fun facts. Chad Hermanson and Pat Mahomes' dad.
Oh, just 1 year for Pat Mahomes with the Cubs.
Okay.
Pitched in 16 games, 32 innings, struck out 23 at ERA 3.86. He would only play one more year. He played for the 03 Pirates for 9 games.
Have we confirmed that no other 2002 Cubs sired a potential future NFL Hall of Famer?
Oh, I don't
Probably, right? Odds would be, odds would be thin. Yeah. I'll take that one, though. That's one hell of a fun fact. I mean, Delano DeShields was on the 02 Cubs. His son also made the big leagues. But, man, I don't see any football players.
Yeah, I don't know. Will Kinane, the ugliest man who ever played for the Cubs.
He looks like Martin Short's character who couldn't swim but was in the Olympics for synchronized swimming.
It's just that haircut. It was just like, what are you thinking, Will?
I'm jumping ahead now because we're getting towards the end, I think, but I'm looking at the roster. You brought this guy up before. It must have been when we did the 2001 Cubs. Ron Mahay?
Right? Ron Mahay.
Former
two-way Ron Mahay.
Ah.
This Shohei Ohtani of his time. Ron Mahay originally made the big league. He's from he went to South Suburban College and Shepherd High School.
South Suburban. That's what it was. Yeah.
And he originally made the big leagues as a position player for the Red Sox, and then couldn't hit, and they turned him into a relief pitcher, and he pitched for 14 years in the big leagues, including, I believe, 2 stints with the Cubs, right? Or was it just one?
2 separate stints. I'm just looking and seeing that he had 14 point.
2 years.
14 and 2/3 innings with the 0-2 Cubs. Yeah. It's funny. I remember him because he only pitched a total of about 36 career innings for the Cubs over the course of 2 seasons. But I do remember Ron Santo. I did not know he was an outfielder before you mentioned that on a previous podcast, by the way. I don't know why I didn't catch that at the time.
Yeah, he got 22 at bat, 20 at bats in 1995. He got 4 hits, a homer and 3 RBIs, just like Chad Hermanson.
Right.
And then the Red Sox are like, Ron, you can't, you really can't hit.
Yeah.
But you can throw, and you're left-handed, so let's give it a shot. And it worked.
Yeah, and for some reason I also remembered him as Rod Mahay, so I consider myself edified now. Ron Mahay.
But yeah, so Mark Prior with the very star-crossed career. He was incredibly good in 2003, and so good that new manager Dusty Baker could not stop watching him pitch.
Like a shiny new toy.
So from August 10th to September 27th, Mark Prior in 2003 made, what's that, 4? He made 10 starts. He won 8 of them. That's pretty good.
Yep.
And he threw, these are his pitch totals in those games. 116, 118, 100, 116. Not so bad. Back-to-back, 131, 129, 109, 124, 131, and 133.
I remind you that Mark Prior was 22 years old in 2003. With prior to that, not even a full major league season under his belt. And those are all high pressure games. Wow.
So then in the postseason, he made 3 starts. Started Game 3 against the Braves through a complete game, 3-1 win over Greg Maddux through 133 pitches.
Okay.
He then started Game 2 of the NLCS, a game you will remember at one point the Cubs were winning 12-0.
Yep.
That's why Dusty
12-3 or something like that.
They
Whatever.
won 12
it was like it was a 7-8 run lead by the 5th. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. So that was Dusty. He only made him pitch 5 innings that day. Oh no, that's not right. He had him pitch into the 8th.
Yeah.
Through 116 pitches, and then he had to come back, and he inexplicably ran out of gas.
Yeah, who could have seen that coming?
Thank you, dustbag.
Yeah,
but that's.
But you know,
someday we're going to do the 04 one, and that's going to get worse when.
Yeah, because Pryor was still good in 04.
He was still good, and then he would get. He had. Well, of course, 03 was the ran into Marcus Giles.
Correct.
And obviously hurt himself and stayed in to keep pitching. That was good.
Well, that I think is ultimately that's the nexus of the whole thing, right? Because years later, when he kept coming on and off the injured list and throwing towels, years later he had some scope that was done that determined that deep in his shoulder there was some previously unobserved tear that they deduced was the result of a trauma.
Right. When they finally cleaned his shoulder out because he wasn't going to pitch anymore and they could really get in there and just try to make him so he was, comfortable.
Yeah.
His doctor told him that he had signs of overuse, but his main problem was what you said. There was trauma to the shoulder.
Yeah.
That clearly had come from a collision. And
yeah.
There's almost no chance it didn't happen against Marcus Giles. So he finished that game, or he didn't finish that game, but he continued to pitch.
Well, he went back out to pitch, yeah.
It was like a half day for him, though. At 5 innings, he only had to throw 95 pitches. He then he was on the DL until August 5th. And August 5th, Dusty only made him go 79 pitches in 6 innings. But then after that was the other thing I forgot to mention. After he'd come off the DL with having his shoulder, bash. That's when that string that I just read off started.
Oh my God! Yeah, absolutely no prudence employed. Well, It's interesting to look back on the events of what was his debut, May something. This like how
Got to take your
I mean,
Prevagen, and you remember back to May 22nd, 2002.
May
20 years farther back than they made you think back tonight to Wilson Contreras' 100th home run.
correct, almost to the day. In fact, that would have been a better, even though it's a bittersweet star-crossed career, that would have been a much better Prevagen ad. Almost 20 years ago today, Mark Pryor, before Dusty Baker ruined him,
The only
made
person
his
that
much anticipated debut.
The Marquee employs that remembers back farther than 3 years ago with the Cubs is Ed Hardig. And
Oh,
they
really?
don't really employ him. I'm sure they
Well,
call
they
him up and make him give him facts for free.
technically they employ Pat Hughes on the Lord's Day, right? Surely Pat remembers Mark Pryor's debut.
I don't know. Did he strike out 20 batters? Because Kerry
No,
Wood did. Let me tell you, Mike. Let me tell you about Kerry Wood striking out 20.
I guarantee
It was
you,
a
Pat
cold day against the Astros.
I guarantee you, Pat Hughes probably remembers Don Baylor's mystifying decision to have Augie Ojeda lay one down to bring up his rookie pitcher for his first major league at
I don't
bat.
know if it happens in the fourth inning. They're probably playing the attendance game.
Well,
They weren't even paying it. They didn't even know what happened.
that's the original Pat and Ron show. Yeah.
I listened a little over the weekend, and they like John Greenberg commented the last time he was on. They literally did like an inning and a half of the attendance game.
They really do stretch
They
it
make
out.
a meal out of that now because they got nothing else to talk about. So they really drag it out.
There's two reasons I find that funny. Number one, they do it on the road too, which is weird because of the whole idea that you know your ballpark. Number two, that whole game has been rendered meaningless since like the second Reagan administration when Major League Baseball stopped counting the turnstile clicks and just tickets sold. So
Yeah, like
it's always
every game at Busch Stadium 3
right
is a sellout,
always,
even though you look
Yahoos
and there's
are buying
half
tickets,
full. Fuck those guys.
Yeah. And fuck the attendance game for
Fuck the
what it's
attendance.
worth.
It's
Sorry. I feel like the attendance
hate
game.
the attendance game. It's terrible.
It's just so dumb.
Let's see. So notable 2002 Cubs. I guess
Besides
we didn't talk
all
about.
the,
So we
besides
get,
all the
we
luminaries
get a
that
chance to
we
talk about
mentioned,
this. So you did mention it. Don Baylor, who had come to the Cubs in 2000 and had a very bad team,
correct.
and then managed them in 2001 when they won as many games as they did in 2003.
Correct.
The beloved
And
2003 Cubs,
more.
kind of. And
I
then
believe one more. But anyway, yeah.
and things went bad early with the 02 Cubs, and he got himself fired. And they had a French manager for a day.
Not Renee. So no, it was Renee, not Marcel.
It was Rene Lachman.
Right.
Not to be confused with his brother, Marcel.
I'm still puzzled about this. Yeah, Franco.
Do you know why Marcel Lachman didn't manage the Cubs that day?
Why?
He got stuck in an invisible box. He couldn't get out. Oh, nope, sorry. That was Marcel Marceau.
Right. All right.
That was a joke that about 8 people out there remember. If you remember good mime humor from the 70s and 80s, you're going to get that joke. That's a good one. Is that more obscure than Daddy, What's Grenada?
Wait a second. I'm not even sure. What's that from? Wait, I know that now.
So it's a good thing you read the newsletter that you get for free.
Hey, I do. I missed it. All right.
I did put it in a footnote, so it was kind of hidden.
Okay.
Okay, so Jesse, might as well talk about it. What the hell? Let's talk about this. The 02 Cubs. Who cares if we go off the rails?
Venture off.
Jesse Rogers wrote a story about the shift. And in it, he asked David Robertson, Cubs relief pitcher, about it. And Robertson said, basically, the thing I don't like about it is, how are we supposed to explain it to the kids? Like, here's where the shortstop plays, but the shortstop never plays there. And in my mind, I thought, Daddy, what's a shortstop? Which then made me think of, I don't know if you remember, back in the early 80s, Time Life Books had a series on Vietnam. And they had this overwrought commercial with this little kid and his dad, and they're in front of a bookstore, and I think maybe it was a travel agency, because in the SNL spoof it was a travel agency, and there was a poster that showed Vietnam, and the kid goes, "Daddy, what's Vietnam?" Well, they did a spoof on Saturday Night Live, and A. Whitney Brown, I remember A. Whitney Brown.
I do remember he was always the formally dressed. Yeah.
So
We had a
him and his
certain
son are
attitude,
walking
man.
in front of a travel agency, and there's a sign for Grenada. And this would have been just a couple of years after the
The,
infamous invasion of
the
Grenada,
invasion of, about
where
1981
some
or
medical
82.
students needed to be freed, even though they
That's
didn't
right.
know it. And so the Marines showed up on the beach, the smallest country in the Caribbean, one of the smallest
Yeah,
countries in the
it's a
world.
postage stamp.
We sent, like a aircraft carrier and lots of
Some
people.
serious firepower.
So it starts, Daddy, what's Grenada? And then it's a commercial is about this fake set of Time Life books. There's like 60 books, and they're going on. And A. Whitney Brown is, we answer all of the questions. Like, where is Grenada? How did we find it? What did the Marines do the rest of that week? And they show pictures. It's pretty funny. My whole life, I've always been like, Daddy, what's Grenada? And so I made that joke.
All right.
So I did link to it in the thing you can watch. But except it sucks because the old SNLs, they don't put them on YouTube, and
You gotta go to Peacock or whatever.
so it's on Peacock, but I didn't expect that people subscribe to Peacock. So there is a link to the video, the full episode, hosted by Paul Schaefer and Bruce Hornsby in the range with the.
What?
Yeah, I'm sure you get a little mandolin wind.
Sure.
At 20 minutes and like 14 seconds, you can zip right to it and you can watch the
Okay.
Grenade. So there's that.
Oh,
So I'm glad we detoured
Thanks for the
that.
tip.
But anyway,
Not sure how we got there, but
Don Baylor gets fired. We talked about this before, but I believe in another podcast we decided that was the day. Did Andy MacPhail fire himself?
No, I just to rehash it one more time. In 2000, Andy MacPhail fired Ed Lynch, his general manager, mid-season after Lynch had hired Don Baylor, and MacPhail assumed the reins within short order. Jim Henry was sort of the shadow.
Yeah, he was like he promoted Jim to like assistant.
And I think, yeah, that's it. Henry got promoted either the same day or within the same 2-week window. So this ushered in the end of Andy MacPhail as general manager. So yeah,
so Don Baylor gets fired. It's right before the All-Star break, and they've decided they're going to do this extensive search, and they looked all the way to AAA, and Bruce Kim, who was a former big league catcher, who the Cubs thought, ooh, this guy's going to be a great manager someday, much like what they currently have.
Well, and also much like what they just took the playbook from 1991, 11 years earlier, when they fired Don Zimmer and they let John Vukovic or Joe Altobelli manage for a day, and then they hired a former catcher for the White Sox, because Kim was a former catcher for the White Sox and Cubs, and just the White Sox, who was managing the Cubs in Iowa, and just like with Bruce Kim, Jim Essian did not survive past that season. So, yeah, it was eerily similar.
So they hired Bruce Kim, who didn't start until after the All-Star break. And the big deal was the Cubs had not issued good old number 10 for a few years. We decided, just like a couple. Scotty Bullitt had worn it.
Yeah, well, of course, Leon Durham.
Terrell Lowry. They were the last two to wear it in some order.
Dave Kingman back in the day. Yeah,
Lloyd McClendon.
Luis Salazar. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, as recently as what, like 1998?
Something like that.
Just a few years before.
They hadn't retired it, but they weren't issuing it.
They hadn't retired it because they were adhering to this silly thing about they don't retire numbers for players that aren't in the Hall of Fame.
Just a year later, they would scrap that.
Even though, like 15 years earlier, Uncle Jerry retires the very mediocre Harold Baines when he still has like 12 years to play in the majors. So,
and he actually, to save money, instead of hanging Harold's number on the wall, they hung Harold on the wall.
Right.
He was DHing, so he would climb off the wall to go hit, and then go back to display his uniform on the wall between innings.
Right.
So Bruce Kim gets the job, and he wants to honor his managerial mentor, Jim Leland.
Okay.
And so he must have coached with him with the Pirates.
Sure.
Coached under him.
Okay.
And so I don't know if Bruce played with the Sox when Leland was there. Maybe that's where they first were connected.
He might have played for La Russa, and Leland was on La Russa's staff, so that might be their first connection. Sure.
So he asked to get number 10, and the Cubs are like, well, you're going to have to ask Ron Santo because we've kind of parked the number.
We just told him that, yeah.
And so I think they probably thought, well, he's not going to fucking ask Santo. He's just going to pick another number. He asked Santo. And Ron, I'm sure, super pissed off, let him wear it and seethed the whole time.
Grudgingly. Yeah, this
I
shitty
can hear
manager.
Ron up there too, going, watching like Kim come out in a windbreaker to change pitchers. He's like, I let him unretire of a fucking number and he doesn't even wear it.
Right. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know I wasn't number windbreaker.
Yeah.
I was
I
number
don't
10.
get it. What is going on? Which he said a lot, frankly, even when
And
the game was
Patrick, my guess for the attendance game is,
yeah. Well, yeah. So good for Bruce Kim. He got his number retired.
he did.
He was the last one to wear number 10 then, just like Bob Avellini was the last to wear number 7 for the Bears.
He got greedy. He then asked if he could wear number 23, and he wanted to wear 26 and 14. And they're like, no.
All right, Bruce,
how about 8?
Time to go.
Can I wear 8? No, you can't.
It would help if you were not 22 games under 500 or whatever. Well, what was Bruce Kim? 33 and 45. So really not much better than Don Baylor. Don Baylor 34 and 49. Yeah. So pretty much stayed the course.
So much to his chagrin, Bruce Kim got the axe at the end of the season and went on to a long managerial career nowhere else ever.
Yeah, which remember too that up until this point in our lifetime, the Cubs had a unique thing of once a guy had managed the Cubs, he never managed again. And, the Cubs were bad. So for so many years, we had many managers. Your Gene Michaels, your Don Zimmers, your Jim Fries, your Jim Lefevers, your Tom Troublehorns, Jim Riggleman, I was going to say, but he, I believe, was the first that got recycled. And that was long after 2002. And then, of course, there have been a few others since, obviously, Joe Madden. And I don't even think Baylor was, though. So it was almost a curse. You're no longer managing the Cubs, and you're no longer managing.
Did you know Bruce Kim went to high school in Norway?
No, I know that it's weird that I always thought it was weird. He has 2 M's on the end of his name.
Norway, Iowa.
Oh, Jesus. Well, it's probably founded by
Cedar
Norwegians.
Rapids.
I guarantee it was.
Grew up in Norway, Iowa.
There's a Norway, Michigan too. I mean, so he's probably got some Nordic roots. By the way, out of curiosity, I'm going to mention this now. It did not happen in 02. I just want to throw it out there because we've already done 2000, and we've already done 2001, and we've already done 2003. It could come up anytime we talk about Arnie Harris, but I want to I'll put it in the context of 2002. This was the first season in about 50 years in which Arnie Harris was not the producer of the Cubs. Arnie was a legend, and I only bring this up because I think it's hilarious in a very dark, mean, I'm going straight to hell way in which Arnie Harris died. And I always like to characterize it that stuck having dinner with Chip Caray late in the preceding 2001 season that Arnie just decided he had enough. And I remember everyone felt so bad for Chip because the poor guy has been through all this. He had to replace his grandpa. Chip would continue to broadcast for a while, but things have been rough. And then he had to, sit there shocked and alarmed as Arnie Harris was just choking and having a heart attack in public at this restaurant. And, but I don't know. We bring up Arnie a lot, so I don't know. It's probably not the time. I just wanted to bring up how he died.
Is there a chance? I'm going to guess there's a non-zero chance that Arnie faked his death to get out of dinner.
He's still alive.
He was getting ready to retire, and he's like, I can't make it through the rest of this fucking season with this guy. I'm going to pretend I choked on this chicken bone.
Well, it's not even the rest of the season. It was like the night before the last game. No. So maybe it was more like, oh, shit, next year I have to do this again. Because I remember it was like the night before the last game. So it was sad. It was like Arnie brought us a lot of pleasure as kids, whether we knew it or not. I think we picked up on the inside jokes between him and Harry at a young age. And he was obviously a very skilled producer by this point. He'd been doing it for frickin' ever. And, and he had, had a following. He was a national presence.
So what's he best known for? He spelled his name weird. A-R-N-E.
Right. There's no I. Right.
Hat shots.
Arnie Harris.
When Steve Stone would start to tell, when Dwayne Stats and Steve Stone worked together, which is a very underrated tandem. They were very good together.
I agree.
Steve would make these horrible
Yep.
pun stories about players' names. And at some point during the telling, Arnie would cut to a shot of the lake. That happened all the time. And of course, Arnie, much to Harry's um, delight, could find any fan with big boobs in the stands.
But I
At all
always
times.
thought that that's what the quote unquote hat shots
Yes,
were. It
that's
was like,
actually
yeah,
what
they were
they
hat
right. They weren't
shots, but
really
there's
looking. They weren't looking for
right.
hats. Yes,
No, it
he
might
might
so
mix in a
it
couple. He
might,
might mix in a hat,
but
but they were
and it
mostly
just so
boobs.
and it would just so may happen that if there was a particularly voluptuous viewing, that there was also a person in the shot with a hat. I think that was kind of like that.
The
So
uh, the Steve pun story that I still remember because it was
it's
so
not.
bad
I've got
it
the
stuck
hands of a
with me.
sturgeon. Sorry.
Not the hands of a sturgeon, but they're all similar. He was talking about Lance McCullers, and he told this long story about how Lance's grandfather had this coat. He had this prized coat, and when he died, he left it to Lance's father. I guess he left it to his uncle first, and then something happened to the uncle, and his uncle gave, it got willed to Lance's father, and now it was about to be handed over to Lance. Little did he know that at the time that Lance's son was also going to pitch in the big leagues, and he could also get the coat. And you could hear Dwayne like start to go, "Oh boy, like here it comes!"
Right.
And it was, of course, Dwayne, as you'll know, it's the coat of many McCullers.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sure.
the Dolly
Yeah.
Parton
Yeah.
song, "Coat of Many Colors." And then Arnie immediately cut to a shot of the sailboats out on the lake.
Nice, right, and yeah, Arnie would also be roped in on the jokes about who'd pick up the check. It was a part of our youth, and so yeah, I feel it's not like I shoehorned it in because this would be the first season without Arnie Harris, and he did provide a lot
Arnie's
of
wife was Arlene,
memories.
is that right?
Is that right? Okay,
I
yeah, I'll
believe
take your word
they
for it.
talked about her, and she had a very similar name. I thought it was Arnie and Arlene,
Sure, Arnie,
but I could be wrong.
yeah. He apparently was 38 years, not 55. That Arnie was the producer director.
Well, he had a
So
contract for 55, and he decided he couldn't work with Chip anymore, so he
nope, right, and
pretended
and
he
had
died.
to had to fake his death in the most public way possible. Like I think it was
Oh, it
Smith
makes it
and
more
Walensky
believable.
or something. Oh, no, it was Smith and Walensky. There's a Tribune article you can find, and it was. I remember everyone felt so bad for Chip. I was just like,
Oh, that's
all
my
right.
wife's
But then
favorite steakhouse, Smith and Walensky.
it's good. It's right on the river. Yeah, I've never been there myself, but I got the scenery
Remember
itself. It
the
had to
first
be
time we
pretty
went, she
cheesy.
didn't know how it worked at a steakhouse. That you order everything, like you have to order the sides, and you have to order everything else, and her eyes just
Uh-huh.
kept getting bigger and bigger as she was calculating what the bill was going to be.
Correct. Right. I've been to
This is before
Morton's.
we were
I've never
married.
been
I'm
to
like,
Smith and
don't worry
Walensky.
about it.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I, I know how much
Yeah.
it's going to cost. We're fine.
Right.
Can I get? Yes, you can get those. Okay, good.
That's right. You're gonna pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you go to Harry Caray's with Dave Kaplan.
Just down the street, basically.
And
Or a
then
block.
Dave is like throwing food at you. He's like, no, let's get this.
Nice.
Let's get this. And it was Chuck and Mike Brott.
I remember that. Yeah, you guys went out to dinner, right?
Yeah. Was TJ with us?
Right.
We had another person. I forget who it was.
You got to hook that up again. Get me involved. I could use a
Right.
free meal cap. I'll
And
take
we're
it.
all starting, after a while, we're looking at each other like, oh, shit, how are we going to, now it's just starting to
Right.
get expensive.
We don't make caps money. Yeah.
Chuck never arrived at the table.
Nice. All
And we
right.
were at table 10. We were at Tom Scher's table 10.
I got to give props to Cap because you have done nothing but goof on that guy for the better part of two. Not really, but you have, and like he takes it in stride. So good for him.
And
good for you.
He will just randomly call me. Like, just decides, hey, I want to chat with Andy. And I'm sure he does that with all, lots of people.
Right. Yeah.
But
you're
I'm in
not
the
that
rotation.
special, but still,
The
right,
first time
you're
I'm
not-
like, oh, there's a butt dial. And I
right.
answered it, and maybe it was, but he talked to me for 20 minutes. So,
Excellent. Well done. Well, too bad we didn't have Cap on to, get his takes on the 2002 Cubs.
if we were gonna have him on, remember this crap, the 97,
97,
that was
yeah,
the one to get. The year he had to live on the billboard.
No.
But, or in the van, right? He was in the WGN
The van, right at Clark and Addison, I believe. Yeah, down right by the McDonald's.
So let's see. Let's wrap up here. Any other notable
You,
2002 Cubs.
you tell me. I took a perusal. We covered a lot of them, so
Let's
you
see.
know.
We talked about Angel Echeverria. I forgot him. Darren Lewis.
Eh,
Hmm?
not the running back for the Bears, but yeah, the guy after whom Dusty Baker named his son, Darren, who almost got stampeded by JT Snow in that season's World Series. How about that?
Yes.
Darren Lewis of the Cubs. Darren Lewis's namesake almost got trampled at home plate.
Oh yeah, Kevin Ory 2.0. His return hit 281 in the return. Of course, it was only for 13 games at the end of the year.
Should have kept him. Could have solved our problem at third still.
Yeah, instead they went and got some guy named Ramos Ramirez the next year.
Right.
Terrible.
That's right. Yeah, this was the last year of the, oh, why can't we get anybody to play third since Santo? And everybody always ignored Bill Madlock in retrospect.
Do you remember left fielder Mario Encarnacion?
Kind of. I almost confused him with the aforementioned Echeverria, though. But I kind of remember Mario Encarnacion.
What was the Reds' Encarnacion? Juan?
Yeah,
do you remember how Juan? Do you remember how his career ended?
No.
He was playing for the Cardinals, right? And he got hit in the face with a foul ball in the on deck circle.
Oh,
that was it.
Played again.
He never played again.
Wow. He's a regular Benji Molina, whoever the guy that Ben Christensen threw a pitch at.
No, not Benji Molina.
No, his name was Anthony Molina. There, right.
Benji would have been that's Yachty's brother.
Yeah. Who won a World Series in 2002.
Yeah, like how it all ties together.
It all keeps coming back to 2002, man.
Did we talk about Francis Beltran and Carlos Sobrano beating the shit out of each other?
In previous episodes we have. Let's bring it up because Beltran was actually on the 02 team, right? They were just in that
Francis
tiny-ass
listed at 6'6", 255. So him and Carlos basically the exact same size. In that tiny, shitty little Cub clubhouse.
Two psychotic Latin
would literally put boxing gloves on and just beat the shit out of each other for fun before games. Why not?
Can you imagine how amused some of those teammates were?
I'm
like, holy
terrified
shit.
more than amused, I would guess.
Right, actually, you're right. Like, what happens if somebody gets brain damage? I witnessed it.
Let's see. Francis's best year in the big leagues would have been 2004. He had a 4.63 ERA for the Cubs.
Not that great.
No, he wasn't very good.
I had high hopes for him.
He looked cool. He was big.
Yeah, he was like a Carlos clone. It felt like.
Flash Gordon pitched for the 0-2 Cubs.
F that guy. He could have been better in 01.
Let's see. He got traded to the Astros for, I'm sure.
Would that be back to the Astros? Probably.
No, he had been a Royal and a Red Sox.
Oh, that was it.
Failed starter with the Royals, closer with the Red Sox, closer with the Cubs. And it pitched for the White Sox.
Wow.
Just the next year.
Flash.
He pitched for the White Sox for a full season. Got traded he got traded for nothing. Him and Ross Rolacek got traded for Travis Anderson and Mike Nannini.
No, not registering. Yeah, I was resentful about Gordon because like Alou in 02, Gordon in 01 was a big free agent signing and wasn't ready when the season started. Luckily, Jeff Facero bailed him out. And then when Gordon came back, he was largely okay, but he blew a save in his first game. And then he gave up that homer to Preston Wilson. And even though he was otherwise pretty good, it just didn't sit well with me.
Let's see. That's about it. Jason Beret had been really good for the Cubs in 01.
Correct.
He was the opposite in 02. He was 1-10 with a 5.67 ERA.
Yeah. You knew that 01 team was a castle made of sand. Well, and Sam, because on offense, Sosa had a ridiculously single-handed output, and they had career years out of Jon Lieber. I wouldn't say Beret had a career, but he probably had his second best year. Julian Tavares was very good, and it's like none of these guys are, especially because Lieber threw so much, just didn't see it standing up, and it didn't.
The 02 Cubs had four guys that year lose double-digit games. Kerry Wood was 12-11. Matt Clement was 12-11. Jason Bray was 1-10, and Juan Cruz was 3-11, 3-11, and he had a 3.98 ERA. The thing I remembered about Juan was
You've mentioned
that
this before, and this is why he had a 3.98 ERA.
nobody was better at giving up unearned runs than Juan Cruz.
Correct.
It was like he was the official scorer in his head. He's like, okay, let's see. That should have been the third out. None of these runs are going to be earned. Everybody's scoring. What the hell?
But that totally correlates. You talked about it before, and then you tried looking it up, and you saw some one year it was kind of probably this year. But that's evident by virtue of the number of losses with the ERA almost to some degree.
If you look at the Cubs who pitched the most, Kerry Wood pitched 33 games, 213 innings. He gave up 5 unearned runs. Matt Clement, 205 innings. He gave up 2 unearned runs.
Okay.
Juan Cruz.
Surprising. Clement seems like he'd be the kind of guy.
Only pitched 97 innings, less than half as much as those two guys. He gave up 13 unearned runs.
You're right. And like I said, I'm actually impressed that Clement wasn't the guy who gave up because he seemed like the kind of guy that
same thing. If things things have gone bad,
like his shoulders and then look to the bullpen and try to get out of there.
Actually, I wonder he may have turned into that guy.
I hate ripping it. I mean, like Clement was so critical in 03, but I always have a bad taste in my mouth for the two things. Number one, and this one took me a while to really, really sink in, but it's just that supposed reluctance to go into Game 7 on short rest. But he also had a penchant in general. I think we noticed it more when we were paying more attention in 03 because 02 was his first season. But whenever he'd get into trouble, it seemed like he would always start looking into the bullpen. And we always kind of interpret that to be like, get me out of here.
He was a guy who looked at the bullpen and wanted to be nowhere but
he might be a Hall of Famer today. He'd be okay with 3-4 inning starts maybe.
So our suspicions were right, but it was actually before he was a Cub. 1999 with the Padres, Matt Clement gave up. This is 16 unearned runs. And then a year later, 14 more for the Padres.
Way to pick up your team.
And his ERAs were still terrible, 4.48 and 5.14.
Yeah. He was a hot prospect. The Cubs probably got his best years, actually, because, he ended up having a pretty average career. But...
Matt Clement led the league in 4 categories in his career.
Really? 4 variant categories? Was one of them walks? No.
In 2000, he led the National League in walks with 125. Okay. And then 3 times, he led the National League in wild pitches.
Okay.
Including once with the Cubs.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess again, especially considering that he was the result of a rare trade in which the Cubs benefited, right? Because we gave up Dontrell, but again, nobody knew Dontrell was any good, and the Cubs hammered him in the playoffs anyway. But Clement was a very important part of the 03 team, but I choose to focus on the negative.
2002 was the follow-up season for Jon Lieber to his 20 wins in 2001.
Yep. As I mentioned in the beginning of the podcast, there was a game, and you couldn't find it on Baseball Reference, but he pitched in a game that got rain delayed, and then after like 90 minutes, Baylor had him go back out. And he went on the DL a few weeks later and was hardly heard from again.
Yeah. Way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, Baylor and Baker, neither of them were necessarily great friends of pitchers, I would say.
Let's see here. I guess it doesn't list it. His last start before he went on the DL was he pitched well against the Cardinals.
Wait, I'm sorry, who's this?
Lieber. No, he didn't. He gave up 8 runs. Oh, I bet it's the start before this.
Yeah,
I think I found
it. If you can find a game that's like a 6-hour game, which do game times factor in rain delay time?
They pause it, but they should note the rain delay time in the.
Got it. Yeah, it was because I don't think he didn't pitch much after the summer. So part of it was like he threw his life on the line in 2001 to win 20 and have his career year. So he was maybe going to burn out anyway, but it didn't help that. I know that he went back out to pitch after a long delay, and that was kind of almost like the Mark Pryor, Marcus Giles. It was like almost a direct. You could just almost physically draw the line. The correlation was pretty clear. But yeah, and I just because we'll never, Lieber. We've covered every other season, even '08 when Lieber was completely washed up and came back. So just want to mention again, Jon Lieber, one of my all-time favorite Cubs because he worked fast and he didn't walk people.
He
So
he pitched in back-to-back 2-0 losses to the Braves.
did he really?
Yep.
And those are probably like 2 hour, 20-minute games, I bet. Because I love that. Even in 1999 when he arrived, he worked like I hated. That's why I hated Steve Traxel. There's such a contrast. He had Traxel and Lieber on the same staff, and Lieber was like, "Fuck it, let's get the game going. Let's keep our infielders on the balls of their feet. Let's keep the game moving."
May 24th, 2002.
Yeah,
Despite a 1.5 hour rain delay, Jon Lieber never lost his smooth rhythm, pitching a one-hitter to give the Cubs a 3-0 victory Thursday and hand the Reds their first shutout loss in almost 2 years. Jon Lieber said, "I wish I could throw every game like that."
yes. Let's listen to him.
He threw
Yeah.
78 pitches, 56 for strikes.
I want to know: are you reading? You're reading like a reporter's summary. It sounds
Yeah,
like.
ESPN.com.
So I'm wondering how many pitches he threw before the rain delay, and how many. I mean, I don't know if it matters. So May 24th. I'm going to pull it up because, it's kind of rude of me just to ask you. How many games did he pitch after that? Because I need to know. Because just for my own edification, I sort of feel like, I kind of feel like that was the death knell when Baylor did that to him. Why can't I find Lieber on the roster here?
Look like they put I would have thought they'd have put the rain delay in the game. Cubs made a flurry of moves. Let's see. That's not the right game.
To his credit, Lieber, he must have had surgery after, because he pitched in important games for the Yankees after that, because he was a good pitcher if he was healthy his whole career. Yeah, he went 17-13 for the Phillies in '05, and then it was '04. He was one of the pitchers that couldn't close out the Red Sox. But he was very good in '04.
It was in '01.
14-8. 106. Say that again?
It was in '01, the rain delay start.
Oh, you're kidding.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's another remember this crap. We thought he ruined his arm after it. Sure, it didn't help, but he won a whole shitload of games after that.
I screwed up the narrative.
Does it say when the rain delay was? Because that would be...
So that was the recap that you're reading was from a game in 2001.
Yeah.
ESPN recap. Okay.
I guess I read that wrong.
That's all right.
Yeah, 78 pitches, 56 strikes. Let's see. Let's see. When did the Reds change pitchers? Because I'm sure they were sensible about it. They probably took their guy out.
Did they still have the 86-year-old Jack McKeon?
Osvaldo Fernandez was pitching for them.
I don't even remember.
Their manager was... Why doesn't it say?
It was after McKeon. 2000, 2001.
Let's see. I would guess the rain delay happened during the fourth inning. Because Osvaldo Fernandez came out after 3 1/3. And it was only 2-0.
Got it.
Let's see. They mark that.
All right. Well, if I do some research and find after the fact that the same thing happened in '02, I will definitely share that because.
No, that's it. That's the one we're thinking. It's a 90-minute rain delay.
But I'm willing to otherwise humbly admit I had it wrong, right? Because that's obnoxious as hell. Yeah. So is the season in which he won 20. All right. So maybe no correlation between, or maybe Baylor is not so absolutely directly involved in trashing his arm. And like I said, like with Joe Borowski, even after he blew out his arm, Lieber got surgery and he had a few more good years. So tip of the cap to go number 32, 24.2 career WAR.
He'd thrown 29 pitches before the delay.
Okay. Yeah, but so what?
I'm sure it's tempting to this sucks. He's pitching great, and we're gonna say, yeah, well,
yeah.
It's 90 minutes. He doesn't go back in. Anyway,
in fairness, it didn't hurt him that season, but also, in fairness, not pulling Mark Pryor and whatever didn't, because Pryor was awesome down the stretch in '03, but I don't know. Still,
Well,
I
take
just
it
want
up
to
with
make
Don
sure I
Baylor.
gave John.
Oh, he's
I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure I gave Jon Lieber his due in any event because I feel we gave him short shrift in 01 and 2000. So
yeah, we did
fast
talk
worker.
about the one of very few recent 20-game winners for the Cubs.
Oh, but we've mentioned that. Right.
Yes.
Remember the rule of thumb
They
is
all
you
come
win
back.
20 games for the Cubs and they all come back. And with the exception of like Maddox and Fergie, actually Lieber was the only one that really sucked when he came back. So
No, he wasn't. Jake was
yeah, Jake
terrible.
too. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. All right.
Because it's Fergie, Greggy, Lieber, Rick Russell,
And Russell. Yep.
and Jake. That's it.
Yeah, you're right. And they were all pretty effective to some degree, except for Lieber and Jake. So
And you kind of wonder, given the way baseball's going, if they're ever going to have another one.
well, no, you're right. Actually, 100%. Jake's the last one.
Now, do you think John Lester won 19 games in 2016? Do you think if he had won 20 that he would be on this Cubs team?
Oh, you'd have to come
John,
back.
you got to come back. I'm
that's
retired.
the rule.
No, you got to
That's the
come back
rule.
and pitch for us. It's in the bylaws.
Right. Yeah. That's a good call.
Maybe he didn't win the 20th on purpose.
Kevin Tapani also won 19 games in 1998, so we could have been treated to his return. But now we'll never know.
He's probably throwing as hard now as he was then.
Yeah,
78.
and also 2002, first time since 1996, I believe that Kevin Tapani. So Kevin Tapani, Arnie Harris, no longer with the 2002.
That's terrible.
I'm done with useless trivia. I think we covered it.
Yeah, we gave the 2002 Cubs far more than time than
Way more. I'm good.
All right. Well, we'll spin the wheel again next time and come up with something else.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Andy.
Many of us have herpes.